I'm going to just start off by welcoming everybody. This is our very first webinar series out of the Idea Studio, which is the Innovation Lab at Lindenwood University. My name is Dr. Amy Peach. I'm Assistant Professor of Education Technology, and I chair the Master of Integrated School Library Media and Technology program at Lindenwood. And I have been looking forward to this chat for probably months because I speak with Marnie and with Bill and with Yvonne in various capacities, and usually one-on-one or in small groups, and to be able to get everyone together under the same umbrella and to have a chat about what our school libraries are looking like, what they have been in the past, where they're going in the future. It's really, really very helpful for anyone who's even considering the field. And so I'm really, really glad to have everybody here. Just to let everyone know, I do go ahead and mute participants as they show up, but if you go ahead and scroll over the top or the bottom of your screen, depending on which device you're on, if you look for a chat feature and go ahead and type in any questions that you may have, then I can go back and address those at the very end with our panelists or with myself. So I am going to go ahead and get us started with our first panelists. So today we have, as I said, three really amazing people that I'm super excited about. Marnie Mastis, who is the president of the Missouri Association of School Librarians. Bill Bass, who is Innovation Coordinator of Parkway School District, and Yvonne Bonner, who is in her first year as a Library Media Specialist at McCluer South Berkeley High School. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Hello.
Good to see you. Okay. So I'm going to lead off and just we're going to introduce ourselves real briefly here to kind of give an idea of who's here and what we're going to talk about today. And the reason why I wanted to offer this to current Lindenwood students, prospective students, really anyone who's interested at all in school library media, because working in both ed tech and library media, I'm seeing a lot of back and forth and interaction between these two areas. So I think for a lot of people, it's very helpful to understand fully where the field has been and where it's going based on our experts today. And I'm going to start off with Marnie Mastis. She is the president of the Missouri Association of School Librarians. She is also lead librarian of Wentzville School District, which is one of the largest and still growing school districts. It's really been taking off lately. And she's also a doctoral student in library and information management. Marnie, why don't you kind of tell us how you got into this field and what your experiences have been real briefly?
Oh, well, thanks. I can tell you when I was a kid, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. Third grade was my ideal year. And I taught third grade and I taught fourth grade. And then I had an opportunity to step out of the classroom and be a full-time mentor. And that really changed my perspective. Being able to see kids in all grade levels, see the way that scaffolding occurred, the way that the maturity grew. I was able to learn about families. I loved that aspect of it. So I was torn then if I wanted to do administration or if I wanted to do library science. So I actually got a degree in both. I have never been sorry about that because library science and administration, so much of that goes hand in hand. And I have absolutely loved being a part of the library, and I have loved the aspect of being able to see the building as a whole and to watch kids grow and mature and develop. And that's been very, very rewarding.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Marnie. Okay, and I'm going to move over to Bill Bass, who is Innovation Coordinator for Instructional Technology and Library Media for Parkway School District, which is another very, very large district in the St. Louis area. He's also president-elect of the ISTE Board of Directors and does more speaking and writing and engaging on social media than most other people I know. So Bill, why don't you give a little bit more about your background?
Sure. So again, my name is Bill Bass. My title is I'm an innovation coordinator, which means lots of things. Sometimes it means that I do things that other people don't want to do, like just kind of by default. But a lot of times what that means and what I try to make it mean is that on a daily basis, I get to work with librarians and teachers around two different topics. One around libraries, and just I am the administrator for our library program in Parkway. And then secondly, I also run and work with teachers and really kind of set direction for educational technology in the program in our district. And so, you know, that takes me a lot of different places, and it gives me a lot of different opportunities to interact with teachers and kind of try to do a lot of visioning and see where we might want to be in 5 to 10 years in terms of library and in terms of technology, just in general. So kind of the way I got here was I'm a recovering English teacher. I taught high school English for lots of years, and it was great. Literature and writing and story is kind of always the way that I see the world and look at what is out there. But then I got into that ed tech role, and then moved into as an administrative role, kind of combined that literature piece and the strategic planning that we needed for our library program with my background in ed tech, and so here we are.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you very much. And Yvonne Bonner is a first-year library media specialist at McCluer South Berkeley High School here again in the St. Louis region. She was a business education teacher and tennis coach, and she is also a recent Lindenwood Library Media Program alumni grad and winner of the 2017 Dorothy Doyle Award for Exceptional Library Media Students. And so Yvonne, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll definitely get into a lot of detail around what your first year has been like out in the field, but just a little bit about how you arrived in this role.
Okay, thanks, Amy. I came from the business world. So just to kind of make a long story short, I was a business major in undergrad. I graduated from Mizzou. I worked in corporate America for 14 years, and all of a sudden I decided to go back to school, get a master's in teaching, and I became a business teacher. I taught business for the past 10 years at McCluer North High School, where, as Amy mentioned, I was also the head girls tennis coach. And probably around my 7th or 8th year of teaching, I said, okay, I want to get a plus 30. What do I want to get it in? And everyone seemed to move in the administration direction, which was not the direction I wanted to go in. So I started thinking about what's been my passion in life, and my passion in life has always been literature and books. So I thought, okay, what can I do with this? And as I started doing some research in the field of library media services, I discovered that the library had come a long way since my days of being a high school student and going to the library and checking out books. So I saw that it had moved more towards the technology end of things, and teaching students about databases and a lot of research. And I thought, you know, this could be interesting. So as I looked at different programs around the St. Louis area, and I called Lindenwood, when I spoke with the person who was the head of the program at that time, in one telephone conversation, I knew I had made the right decision to attend Lindenwood, as well as to seek a certification in library media. It was a 5-semester program. After those 5 semesters was up, I was able to move over to another high school in my district and become the librarian. And it was really all about good timing, because the current librarian here was retiring. So it just made like the perfect transition as far as the timing of it was.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a very important word that we should definitely come back to is timing when we get to that point. So, and it's great that you were able to have that conversation, because I think a lot of people who are considering the field, that's what they, and I know Bill and Marnie have probably remembered this. I mean, you guys remember the card catalog and the individual pieces of paper and the big wooden stack, you know, it's something that we just don't even see anymore, but that for a lot of people is what's in kind of going through their mind as they're considering the field. So. Okay. So I'm going to get into just a few questions, and I'm going to open this one up, kind of to everybody. So just jump on in as you have ideas here, because you all come from different backgrounds, and I love the way a few of you talked about even kind of meandering between administration and library media and trying to figure out, what that sort of role would look like for you. So with regard to libraries, which is where you are now, what do you love about working in those libraries or with library media specialists if you're not one yourself?
For me, I love the fact that it is a changing field and that I feel like I'm a part of a true dynamic. Like you've mentioned about the card catalogs, librarians are no longer the keeper of the books. We're not the guardians of the books. And we've been able to move to become the guardians of the children and the education of the kids, and helping to integrate those information literacy skills deeper into their learning. I love the fact that I'm able to be creative, and I'm able to encourage other librarians to be creative. I love to be able to help facilitate that collaboration and sharing to where we can have a lot of programs involved in numerous levels and see that transition from elementary to middle to high school, and to be able to work across the board like that. I also have loved getting to know librarians in other districts and across the state through being involved in our professional association. That has made a tremendous difference. I mean, I feel like I can get on the phone and call friends who are librarians in completely different districts and talk to them about other things that are going on or how they work things in their district, and get a tremendous amount of feedback for improvement in our district. So love that collaboration piece.
And I just kind of want to piggyback on what she said, because one thing that I was told before I took this position is that, and especially this depends on the district you're in, but in the district I'm in, there is one librarian per school. So someone warned me, it can be very isolating when you are the only person in that position. So I agree. I love speaking with other librarians and getting together with them and being able to brainstorm and hear what's going on in their libraries. On a day-to-day basis, my interaction with my students is, it's so much more refreshing and positive most days than just being in that classroom and in charge of instruction. Because when they come to see me, for most high school students, I'm a high school librarian, let me clarify that. So that's a different beast altogether. But for most of my students that I see on a daily basis, they love coming to this place on the lunchtime crew. My lunchtime crew, they come in here every day. So I really get to know students in a much more positive, refreshing environment than the day-to-day of my classroom environment.
And I'll just finish up by saying one of the things that I think is the best about working in libraries. First of all, librarians are they're risk takers for the most part. They will, most of my librarians will try anything. If there's something that I want to introduce into a school or something like that, I'm really intentional about going through my libraries and making them a part of the work. But I think the biggest thing when I think about, what do I love about working in libraries, I think that there are very few positions in schools today that have the same impact or influence that a librarian can have. And I say that recognizing that, principals are extremely influential on their building, and coaches are extremely influential on their building as well. But I think the librarian and the libraries are kind of in a different category, just because, every kid that comes into a school is their student. And it's not just kids either. It's adults, it's community, it's parents, it's siblings, it's really anybody in that community that might come into the library. They are the students of the librarian. The librarian is there to help guide them and work with them around whether it's technology, whether it's finding that just right book for them, whether it is, kind of that whole digital age literacy piece. All those things kind of bring that together, and the librarians and libraries are in a unique position in order to have that influence across their schools and really be able to kind of connect the dots between classrooms, between kids and content, and between parent and student as well. There's a lot of connections that libraries can make.
Yeah, and those are all such important points. And I think they really, tying what Bill said, even into both Marty and Yvonne's points, that, as Yvonne pointed out, it's no longer a position of being a guardian of the books, you're guardians of the children. But in addition to that, there's so much more to it. There's the community development piece, being able to engage with all of the stakeholders, and in the kind of educational environment that we find ourselves in now, those connections and that community support has never been more important. And I've definitely seen that, in working with library media specialists in our area. They find that community outreach piece to be a very, very important part of the job now that was never really a huge part of it, maybe 10 or 20 years ago. So my next question is, and this is for everyone too, whoever wants to pop in, what are some of the most important things that you think a library media specialist does? There are probably, if you really whittled it down, probably hundreds of things that an LMS does in any given year. But if you could tag just a couple of the ones that you think are the most critical, what do you think are the most important things that this person will do during the course of the school year?
I can go ahead and start on that. There's lots of tasks that librarians do, but when it comes to the most important thing that a library media specialist does, as far as I'm concerned, is connecting with kids. It's connecting with, and I say that in multiple ways. It's connecting with kids in building a relationship. It's connecting kids with content, with materials, with information. I think that the biggest thing that a librarian can do is connect, kind of across that broad scope. Now, I know there's lots of little things that we do all day. We run that small business that is a library, but that connection, you can't go beyond that, and you can't really sell that short and be an effective librarian in 2018.
And I'm going to jump in and once again piggyback off of what Bill said as far as the connection. I definitely feel the most important connection is that you have the one you have with your students. But being in a new building, the other thing I've learned is one of the most important connections I have is with my teachers in this building, because they have to buy into, and I think this is also dependent upon the district you're in and the where your libraries are in the transition that I've seen. Me in this building, really making that connection with my staff is really important, because I'm in a high school and there's a flex schedule. My staff is not required to bring their classes to me. So I really have to go out and bring them in and make this library feel like a welcoming place for the staff and the students to come into.
Yvonne, that's a great point. This year, my main domain in our school district is at an elementary building. We have always been a fixed schedule, and we've always been release time. So we've always been teachers' plan time. This is the first year that we have moved away from that. And so it has created a different aspect for me as far as developing those relationships. Our teachers are required to accompany their class to the library. And thankfully, my teachers have all been so used to coming once a week that they were more than willing to jump on board to continue that. But it's been a transition with helping to show how I also can push into their classroom and into their lessons to help them with projects that they're doing as well. I completely agree with what you guys have said about relationships. My main goal is that when kids leave the elementary building, they love the library, that there is something about it that they have connected with that has made it a special place for them. Because I know as kids get older, their reading habits and their interests change and diverge. But if they can leave the elementary building with that sense of a connection with the library, there's so much more of a stronger sense that that will continue in their future. Even if there's a lull in between, they'll have that good feeling about the library. One of the main things I think that you're able to do that is by creating a variety of programs where you're able to get kids of different reading levels, different interest levels, and get them associated with the library, as well as connecting with those classrooms. But you guys hit it. So.
Yeah, no, and that's such an important point, because as a K-12 certification, it's very difficult to train all library media specialists in the same way, because not only is it the job of an elementary school librarian so different than the job of a high school librarian, but definitely from school to school, as you go to urban, suburban, rural, the resources are different, the communities are different, the needs are different. So it can be very, very challenging. And so learning how to be very responsive and just spending time figuring out what your school culture is like and how you can best support that. And I love especially, Marnie, what you said about instilling that love in it when they're young children, because as they grow up, you don't necessarily know what middle school or library or high school library they're going into. And so helping them to learn how to reach out on their own, depending on just how budget or resource strapped, that next step might be. That's something that I think we don't often consider, but it's really great that that's happening. Okay. Marnie, kind of going on to that. So you began in your district 31 years ago. It's a very, very long time. And you and I came out and I met you for coffee about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And I remember going out to this area and getting lost. I had to weave around a little bit. And I wound up in a neighborhood that was right behind all of the development, the Targets and the strip malls and the chain stores and everything that had been developed just in the last few years, and going back into a neighborhood where the homes were probably, 50, 60 years old. And there were a lot of pickup trucks, and, it looked like the two environments were so drastically different within just a few blocks of each other. So it was really, it was so interesting to be in an environment that is going through, that kind of transition. I can't even imagine what it feels like to be a lead librarian in, such a very large district. And so my next question is, certainly in the context of Wentzville, where you've been, but definitely in general, because you talk about networking with other librarians too, how have you seen school libraries change over time?
Well, when I started in Wentzville, there was one elementary, one middle school, one high school. They were all large, but there was only one of each. Now we just opened our 12th elementary. We have 3 middle schools, 3 high schools, and we're slated to open another elementary and another high school year after next. So our district as a whole has changed immensely. Libraries, when I started, you went 1 time a week. The librarian never left the library. What I saw her duties as was checking in, checking out books, and that was the perception I had. It was a place for books, and that's really what it was. Now that we've opened so many, I've had a tremendous opportunity to be able to be a part of the planning of those libraries. And so we've been able to bring in a lot of communication with the architects in talking about even like our high school library, having study rooms in those, painting walls green for green screens, placing the glass over the front of those so there can be visibility, but yet there's that privacy added so that the kids can be in there and working. We've added just so many different features and different elements that never were considered in our initial libraries, because libraries have changed so much. They're places of innovation, they're places of creation, they're places where kids can come and just be a part. There are comfortable seating places, there's still stories. We try to have a lot of parents incorporated, but none of those things happened in our libraries 31 years ago. They were seen as something completely different. And it's been very rewarding to have been a part of that and helping to plan those new libraries as they've opened.
Bill, I know you've seen some of these changes at Parkway too. Is there anything you wanted to add to that one?
I think the biggest thing that I would say is a shift to, and it's not, I don't know that it's a shift in libraries specifically. I think it's a shift in kind of the educational environment, and libraries are shifting in order to respond to the changes, to the needs of their community. And I think that's one of the biggest things. I think that libraries always kind of did that. I think it's just more noticeable now. I think that there are a lot of different kinds of opportunities. I think technology is certainly a big one of those that really drives the work that that librarians do. But I tell the folks in my program all the time that really what we have to do is we have to be responsive to the needs of our community. And our community's needs are going to change, sometimes by hour, sometimes by day, sometimes by year. But those changes are integral to not just staying relevant as a librarian, but as a library program, but to going beyond that, to really being useful and to be able to really help kids. If we always go with kids in mind, we're not going to go wrong. And I think that those changes that have come from libraries or come through libraries, if they are adult-driven changes, those are the ones that haven't lasted. It's the kid-driven changes that really have made a difference in the way that we approach our work as a whole.
Yeah, and that's definitely, I can just speak from being a high school teacher. You're teaching 130 kids in any given day, and those individual students can really get lost. And so what is the immense potential of school library is offering that kind of individual guidance and instruction and just an environment where students can really start to drive those changes. So it's a lot of work and it's a lot of design, as Marnie pointed out. Even designing the physical spaces to accommodate those sorts of things is something that we need to look at. So Bill, and kind of tagging on to that, your district recently reorganized its staffing structure to bring library, media, and technology under the same roof, which isn't often done or hasn't been in the past, but seeing that a little bit more frequently now and talking to more people. So what was the reason behind that decision, and what has been the implication for the library media specialists from what you've observed?
Sure. So I guess first of all, the reason that decision was made was because we kind of saw a void in our instructional technology. Like Amy, you said, we had some staffing changes, and a lot of our we would have considered tech coaches or instructional technology coaches. Those positions changed into more instructional coaching, and so that technology piece kind of there was a little bit of a void in between the needs that we had as a district in order to utilize technology, because we just kept getting more technology every year. We got more stuff, and we needed somebody to help us figure out not just what to click on, but the usefulness of it and kind of vet those things. And so that kind of fell under me, with the library being a part of that. With me, with a literacy background and understanding, the importance of literacy and the importance of reading and books and literature, as well as having that technology understanding, those two kind of came together. And what it did for us, the implication is it pushed us a lot. I can say if you talk to any of our librarians, that the shift to thinking about how we utilize technology and becoming the expert and go-to person in that's a big shift when that is not your training. And so we spent a lot of time, my department spent a lot of time really thinking about how can we be intentional about supporting library and media specialists as we make that shift, and what kinds of things we need to be thinking about in order to support them. And then, how do we not support them after the fact, but how do we help them see themselves as leaders in the space, as instructional leaders in our building, and be able to be seen by administrators, by teachers, and by students, and be the ones to come under that one roof. So I can definitely say it pushed us. It pushed us as a program to be intentional and be thoughtful about the decisions we were making. And I say that in terms of decisions, not just with technology, but just with content that we're getting. The digital content, the more and more digital content that we have, that really changes the game for us a lot. And so when we think about the professional expectations for the modern library media specialist, what we're really talking about is how we can be a viable library program in 2018, because that's a different place than we were in, even 5 years ago. Think of all the changes that have been made, and the advances in technology changed dramatically. And I think that those are all important pieces that really, as educators and as leaders, we have to recognize those changes and roll with them and embrace them and really decide that they are an important part of what we do, not an extra part of what we do. It's kind of integral to the entire environment and our entire mission as those in the profession of library and librarians.
Yeah, I think that you're right. In fact, the fact that you and I are even here having this conversation, Bill, is evidence of the fact that how drastically this has changed. Because you and I have talked about this before, that I forgot that you had a background as an English teacher, and my undergraduate degrees were history and English, and not all, but a lot of my professional background is education technology. And so we're seeing these things kind of merging and meshing together and in ways that aren't predictable. I go to every library that I visit, every student that is doing their clinical or anything else, they all look different, but they're all engaging with all of these sides in various ways. So it's something to keep an eye on. Marnie and Yvonne, anything else that you would add to that about things that you've seen regarding some of the professional expectations that people can expect today?
I really agree with Bill, where modern librarians, they need to be risk takers and they need to be creative, and they need to just jump in and give it all a try. There are going to be things that come and go. There are going to be things that you like better than other things, but having that open-mindedness and being willing to try and to take the next step, to be a leader in that, that really defines a lot of the modern library media specialists.
Okay. So I'm going to move over then to Yvonne, who is, despite the many years of experience of our other two panelists, Yvonne is actually in her first year as a school library media specialist. And so I think she can give us kind of the real deal around what this is like, transitioning from a program where you're learning everything in theory to actually having to do it day in and day out, during the longer hours that are required of a field experience. So Yvonne, what has your first year been like?
So I thought a lot about this question, and I really kind of, it gave me a chance to kind of reflect on what this year has been like, because I've just been like going. And so when I sat down and I started thinking about what this year has been like, it has been, it's been more of a transition than I imagined it to be. And what I mean by that is, it was almost like, teaching in the classroom, I could do that with my eyes closed. And having, being a teacher for 10 years, I had this real sense of comfort every day when I walked into my classroom. And when I walked in here, even though I was coming in here all summer long, when I walked in here the first day of school, it was so different because, as a classroom teacher, you spend that first, preparing for that first day. And as a librarian, I was standing here going, where's everybody? And, there was this buzz around me. And everybody was having those first day jitters. And I was just waiting for somebody to come through the doors. And so when I was hired here, one thing that helped me in a sense, being a teacher in this district, I knew where our libraries were in this district. And where Bill talks about Parkway just getting technology every year, something new. Even though Ferguson-Florissant is a very large district, we are not there yet when it comes to getting something new every day with technologies. And our libraries are not in the same place as some of our counterparts. So when I was hired for this position, that was one of the main things we talked about in my interview process. And I know, Amy, I'm kind of jumping ahead on one of the questions that you have for me, but my first year has been a year of learning so many new things because, like Amy said, I was focused in my program in Lindenwood, and I did a lot of hours at different levels. So I did a lot of high school hours, elementary hours, but actually living, working every day and having to grow and develop this program, which is kind of what I was brought in for. The reality of it was, okay, I have a really good opportunity here. And so it was really, one thing that someone told me is, don't expect for this change to come overnight. And I can definitely say, moving this school to where I want it to be even a year from now, I mean, it's just going to take some time. So my first year has been a year of just learning. And because I am, a lot of librarians, maybe they work as teachers in their school. And then they become the librarians in that same school. That wasn't my story. So as I already mentioned, having to get to know the staff and get them to see my vision that I have for this place, it's been a process. So I that's something I'm going to talk about when we get to the interview part.
That's great. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people can relate to that it's not something that I really thought about, but most people move into a library media position from being a classroom teacher. And normally you've done that role for a while and you kind of have it down and you know what to expect and you're able to plan it. And when prospective students call me and I have that same conversation that the previous chair had with you around, why do you think you want to do this and what are your interests? And what almost always comes out of that conversation is that, the schedule of a classroom teacher is just so rigid and so grueling. And part of the appeal of library media is not having, that really, really specific schedule in a lot of cases. And it's funny. I say, yeah, it's not quite as they may make it look easy, but it's not quite as easy as you think it is. So I think some of them think that it's going to be a fairly simple transition. And what I hear from a lot of people when they're starting is exactly what you just said, that it's a learning process. You're trying to understand what's going on, and you have to be very, very patient because in jumping into it, we have all these wonderful, amazing ideas of all the different things that we want to do, and very quickly realize that you have to prioritize a lot of these things and figure out what has to come first because you're still learning the job yourself. I can definitely see that. Marnie, as lead librarian, you work with a lot of, new librarians to this space. What are some of the things are you seeing a lot of the things that Yvonne's talking about? Or are there other issues that you're noticing?
Yeah, you guys really just said everything I was going to say.
I'm sorry.
Honestly, so many of them go in feeling like that, they know exactly what they're going to do, only to find that every day is a little bit different, and they've got to find their own rhythm and find their own place. If you think about your first year of teaching, and how at the end of the year you go, wow, I'm not going to start my next year that same way. I'm going to do this different or that different. And the library is very much the same way. Every year you continue to grow. Where you talked about prioritizing your programming, to just giving yourself credit for the things you are accomplishing as you're going along. Like Yvonne was talking about, she knew one of her biggest priorities was she had to really get to know her staff. She could have started some phenomenal program in her library, but if nobody had bought into her vision yet, it wouldn't fly. So she's absolutely got the right perspective in that you have to realize that some things have to come first, and it's going to be a growing process. So yeah, you guys said it all wonderfully. So
no, but I think that add-on about prioritizing relationships is a huge point. That is really, you can have, like you said, all of the best ideas in the world, but if nobody's going to buy into them, then you're just kind of tooting your own horn in the corner of the building where nobody ever goes. So that's really important too. All right, so this one's for Marnie and Bill, since both of you do a lot of the hiring in your own districts, or you help kind of recruit some prospects for open library media jobs. So what recommendations would you have for existing students, or for students who are considering the field and are kind of meandering through this? I'm still learning the job, but I'm also, trying to network and get to, know the people in the field a little bit better. What do you think are some of the valuable skills that they should be developing while they're still in, any program, while they're still learning the job? And then do you have any tips for resume building or digital or personal networking, any interview do's and don'ts, just, anything that kind of comes to mind about job hunt strategies that you would recommend?
So yeah, I can definitely start. I think that, for those who are about to enter the field, one of the things that I think that you need to come away with, when I am a part of an interview, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for someone who is willing to take risks and willing to try something. I think that's a big part of it. But I also think, on the other side, having that foundational literacy background is an important piece of this. The literature. And I like to think of this in terms of, just what it means to be literate in the digital age now. And so if someone were to come and ask you, and it's actually one of the questions that I often ask, is what does it mean to be a librarian in the digital age? You don't have an answer to that, that's a problem. Like, that's one of the things, that's one of those foundational pieces that I think you need to have. And understanding that it's a combination of literacy and understanding, how to connect kids with the right books, as well as the technology, as well as the information literacy and media literacy. But beyond that, another big piece that librarians now are looked to for is, how do you work with adults? How do you work with teachers? How do you connect and collaborate? And what are those skills that you have? And here's the thing, I mean, to be really honest, librarian jobs don't come around every day. They're well sought after, and when folks get those jobs, they want to keep them, because it's a great position that you have a lot of, as going back to what I was talking about earlier, you have a lot of influence. So the thing is when I look at resumes, and when I look at when I look at interviewing and things like that, I'm not looking for, I mean, I can find plenty of people who have the technology skills. I can find plenty of people who understand the literature. I can find plenty of people who are, you know, whose resume kind of looks the same because you go through the same classes. You have a lot of the same, things that you're being told. I'm looking for something unique. I'm looking something that is going to set you apart. And sometimes that is, you know, this adventurous makerspace entrepreneurial spirit of, you know, being able to do that. Sometimes that may be just the way that you talk about your relationships with kids that you have in your classroom. Other times that may be your own understanding of how to work with adults and how to teach others that aren't, you know, little guys, or, you know, in high school, big guys, but, you know, that aren't younger guys, you know, really to have them, how do you work with those people and what experiences that you have? So one of the biggest things I recommend is to get out there and connect and practice working with adults. Practice working with kids. You're not going to really understand how to be a librarian until you're a librarian. You're not going to really, and that doesn't have to be through a formalized field experience or something like that. Like that can totally be, you know what, I'm going to volunteer at a library because I'm going to connect with kids and I'm going to explore technology and see what kids are using when it comes to technology and how they're using it. And then how can you develop teachers on top of that? How can you work with them and collaborate with them in a gentle way so it's not you telling them what to do, but you're a coach. You're helping them through. It's not, sometimes you want to have the answers, right? Sometimes you need to be the one that has the answers and you need to be able to say, yes, this is how you do it, whatever it may be. And other times it's, you know what? Let's talk about this. What are you actually trying to accomplish with this technology, with this digital resource, with this physical resource in order to get there? Those things are practiced things. It's not something that you were going to come out of a classroom or come out of library school or come out of anything just knowing how to do. Like you really have to commit to practicing. If I have time, I want to tell a real quick story. One of my librarians, she actually 2 years before she was a classroom teacher. 2 years before she took that library position, she started coming to the professional development opportunities that I was offering during the summer. As a classroom teacher, she was interested in library. She was interested in how libraries work and how librarians connect kids. It was when I talked to her, it was this fascination with the idea of being able to have that kind of influence on the building and really be able to help. The fact is that if you can connect with those type of programs and that type of programming, that's going to go a long way, especially for me. I saw her coming 2 years before she ever interviewed for a job for me. That was ginormous. And it really, you know, like I understood her commitment because I'd been having conversations with her for 2 years.
And if I can just kind of jump in, I want to say I've been around Bill's librarians, and there's one in particular that I'm thinking of that I met at a forum, a Parkway forum, back student, and we met one night. We happened to know a common teacher from our districts, and I reached out to her. She told me to reach out to her, and you know, sometimes people say it, but they don't mean it. And every single time I've reached out to this person, she has been so helpful. I've been in 2 of her libraries because she switched jobs. She has been nothing but helpful. She's always telling me, look, if you need anything, if you have any questions, call me, come see me. And that's another thing I want to stress, because when you have a community of fellow librarians, take advantage of it. I almost see myself as a customer service person. So not only am I here to help my students, I'm here to help the staff, but librarians are the nicest, friendliest, most helpful people. And make sure as a student, you definitely reach out to fellow librarians and stay in touch with them.
One of the things that Yvonne just said is absolutely a quality that I look for if I'm a part of the interview process. In our district, our administrators do the majority of the hiring for library positions, and I've been able to be a part of a number of those, not all of them. But one of the things that Yvonne said is, to me, an absolutely vital part is that you need a librarian who is going to be friendly and welcoming and want to connect with people. They're very approachable. You can have a librarian who has the most awesome skill set in the world, and if the atmosphere of the library isn't friendly and welcoming, that skill set becomes lost. So to me, I'm always looking for somebody who's who wants to know a little bit about me or about the people in the interview, as well as sharing things about themselves. The other thing I look for is that they want to know about what the goals of the district are. Because as librarians, we are supposed to be connecting with the goals of the district, the goals of our building. And if they've done some of that background research to where they know what our goals are, and they're able to bring that into the interview, I know that they are a lot more sincere about wanting to help us reach those goals.
Yeah, I think that of all the things that were said here, every one of you touched on the real fundamental importance of professional networking. It's something that I really, really try to emphasize with our current and even recent graduates, but certainly our current students, that, and no matter what, this isn't even just a Lindenwood thing, anybody else who's in any other program in any other state, when these opportunities come around to you, either they're provided to you by your program. So for any current students who are checking in, remember we have field trips out to libraries in February, March, and April. We do it once a month, and then we're doing them again in the fall. These are the kinds of opportunities that Bill and Yvonne, are talking about, that when these things get passed along to you, if it is at all possible for you to go, then definitely go. It's not just that it gets you seen, as Bill pointed out. He knew, that one librarian 2 years before the person even applied, but it's also, even in situations like this where you're hearing from other people and you're understanding what the field is actually like, what are people actually looking for, because your program is going to be able to support you in the best way that it knows how, by the standards and the curriculum that it supports. But because this field is changing so rapidly, it's very, very hard for curriculum to stay on top of some of those changes. And so that's where these supplemental activities can really, really help out. And so taking advantage of those, either when they're specifically pushed out to you by your program, or if you are on social media, or you you're familiar with librarians in your district, or you're going to a common conference, like we just finished METC and EdCamp, and these are two regional conferences where you get tons of ed tech and librarians and administrators and people of all kinds of mixed company coming together and addressing these things. And so getting out there and not only learning from these people about what that field is like, but also being able to make those connections so those people know who you are, because this is a very, very competitive field. And it's, as Bill said, it's not as simple as just being able to say, well, yes, I truly understand the literature piece of it, or yeah, I've really got the tech part down. Those are important. But then there are also a lot of these other intangible things that, you need to kind of take advantage of. And a lot of it, I'm speaking specifically to my current students now, if you are finding that there are gaps in any of this, you want to make sure to fill those gaps, before you start. And that can be things through your program, or it can be things that you're just finding. There are so many learning opportunities out there. There are more opportunities connect than there ever have been before. And that is, I think, part of the reason why we're seeing so many changes in our school libraries, is we're getting, as you said, Yvonne pointed out, these teacher librarians are just remarkably warm networking. They love to share ideas with you. And so reaching out to them, I mean, even something as simple as a real quick tweet out to a hashtag or to a group of people or hunting around and finding people to connect, a lot of times they will definitely share ideas with you. So I would definitely recommend that on top of all the other things that were said.
Can I offer one more other thing?
Yeah, please.
The only other thing that I would, I mean, there's lots of other things that I could offer, but I guess the one thing that I would absolutely offer here is don't look at this in terms of one of the best things, I think, Myrna, you kind of mentioned this, is one of the best things that I love about librarians is their willingness to give of themselves and their willingness to give of the work that they do to help students. So whether you are in a one district and don't be afraid to share, I guess, is ultimately what I'm saying. There are so many opportunities to collaborate and look beyond your current environment. That's where the value add comes in. It's your ability to connect and your willingness to connect, share your stuff, and share alike then. You know, like when you've got something that's awesome, pass it along, because ultimately, you know, like it's just an idea. It's a resource, something like that. It's going to help other people out. And it's not about your kids, it's about all kids. And I think that's one of the great things that librarians bring, is the attitude of all, as opposed to just my specific school or my specific district. It's really about, you know what, we want everybody to be able to read. We want everybody to be able to be digitally literate. We want everybody to have these skills, because ultimately it's a service to our community as opposed to a service to just our individual kids.
That's great. So Yvonne, I want to wrap up with, just a little bit, you covered this, quite a bit throughout today, but just in terms of people who are thinking about, we get students in all kinds of backgrounds. A lot of them are classroom teachers. Quite a few are actually tech coordinators who are looking to get, sort of certificates and expertise in both areas. We have all kinds of random students coming from random places. So in thinking about your transition from, deciding to move from a business classroom into library media, are there any ideas, recommendations, suggestions that you have for people who are considering this transition? How would they actually get started?
Well, I think you first want to find the program that's right for you. There are a number of programs out there. So actually finding the program that's right for you. Once you're in a program, and this has already been spoken about, but I can't emphasize it enough. The fact of the matter is, you have to remember you're getting a K through 12 certification, and we all know that we have our comfort zone, but really important that you see as many librarians you can see and spend time in their libraries. And as I already mentioned, it takes a phone call, and I've never had a librarian tell me, no, you can't come. It was just a matter of getting a date. And it's really important that you spend time in all three levels, because you just don't know where that first position will come. And if you've been, like, I was a high school teacher for 10 years, and I tried to spend as much time in elementary librarians and middle school librarians as possible, because I wasn't sure that I would get the opportunity to be a high school librarian. So as Bill said, these positions don't come open often. And, when you think about the number of elementary schools, each level that you go up, the positions shrink because the number of schools shrink. So spend as much time as you can in libraries in learning from those librarians.
That's great. It's good advice. Thank you. Okay, so I didn't see anything in the chat right now, and I know that there are going to be a lot of people who are actually checking the recording of this later. So I'm unfortunately, we're not going to be able to answer those questions live here, but I did want to thank everybody very much for your participation, Marnie and Bill and Yvonne. I did want to point out just one thing as we were talking about some of the different possibilities, the different networking and professional development opportunities. I did want to also put in a plug for Mazel. Marnie, you guys have your conference coming up next month, right?
Yeah, our conference is in April. And if you go to mazelonline.org, you'll be able to find registration information and details regarding the conference. We've spent the year with the hashtag what we do, because librarians do so many different things. And so this whole year we've been, anytime we tweet or post, we've been adding that hashtag. And so that is also the theme of our conference, as we carry that through, because librarians do so many different things. And we wanted to document how vast and how our profession has changed. So yes, I would love to have you guys come to the Mazel conference. It's going to be at Tantera, and it's going to be fantastic. We've got a great lineup.
That's great. That's great. It's very exciting. And then for those of you who are not able to physically attend, I'm really glad that you pointed out the What We Do hashtag, which has been really fascinating to follow. If you're on Twitter at all, be sure to check that out, because there's so many interesting posts and ideas and resources that you can find and get a really, really good idea for what the field is like, because there's so many people contributing to that right now. And you'll see it probably blow up the week of the Mazel conference, especially. So
Yeah.
definitely be sure to check that out. Everybody, go ahead.
One more thing real quick. Another
Yeah.
thing that Mazel has done this year is tried to help support the new librarians. And we have developed a webinar series where once a month we've taken a different topic and presented a webinar. So as Mazel members, those are available, and you can go back and look at those archives or join in if you are a Mazel member. And so those people looking to enter the field, you can get a lot of great tips and information for starting a lot of those different programs and strategies within your library.
Well, that's great. What a great benefit, especially with the, as Yvonne was talking about the first year and trying to weave through all the different aspects of the job. It can definitely be beneficial to have support during that first year. So it's great that you guys are doing that. Everybody, once I get this edited and set up and put on our website, I will definitely include links to all of the things that our panelists talked about, any resources that we had addressed. And I thank you all very, very much for participating today. It has been wonderful, wonderful chatting with you. And I wish all of you the very best of luck in developing your school libraries.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.
See y'all later.
Bye-bye.